I didn't speak for 48 hours, and I thought silence would be peaceful, but something unexpected started happening inside my mind. The moment I stopped talking, the outside world became quieter, but inside my head, the noise became louder than ever before. Thoughts I usually ignore started coming forward, repeating, questioning, and demanding attention like they had been waiting for this moment. Without distractions, my brain began replaying memories, conversations, and emotions I didn't even realize I was holding on to for so long. Every small sound around me felt amplified, and I became hyper-aware of everything, from footsteps to distant voices to my own breathing. I realized how much I normally use talking as an escape, a way to avoid facing what's actually going on inside my mind. As hours passed, my thoughts became sharper, clearer, and sometimes even uncomfortable, forcing me to confront things I had been avoiding. I started noticing patterns in my thinking, like how often I overthink simple situations and create stress out of nothing. Without speaking, I began observing people more deeply, noticing their expressions, tone, and energy in ways I never had before. It felt like I was finally seeing the world without filters, just pure observation without reacting or responding instantly. But then something strange happened. My mind slowly started to calm down, like it had finally said everything it needed to say. The chaos inside my head turned into clarity, and for the first time, my thoughts didn't feel overwhelming anymore. I began understanding myself better, my fears, my habits, and the silent pressure I put on myself every single day. Not speaking made me realize how much unnecessary talking we do, often without meaning or purpose, just to fill silence. Silence started feeling powerful instead of uncomfortable, like it was giving me control over my own mind again. I became more intentional with my actions, more aware of my surroundings, and surprisingly, more emotionally stable. Even simple things like eating, walking, or sitting felt different, more present, more real, and less rushed. I noticed that I didn't need to react to everything, and that alone reduced so much mental stress instantly. The urge to speak didn't disappear, but it became weaker, like my brain was learning patience in real time. I also realized how much energy we waste on unnecessary conversations that don't add value to our lives. By the second day, silence didn't feel like a challenge anymore. It felt like a tool I never knew I needed. My confidence grew in a different way, not from speaking, but from being completely comfortable with my own thoughts. I understood that being quiet is not weakness. It's actually a form of strength that most people never develop. For the first time, I felt like I was in control of my mind instead of my mind controlling me constantly. When I finally spoke again, my words felt more meaningful, more intentional, and less automatic than before. I didn't feel the need to talk just for the sake of it, and that changed how I communicated completely. This experiment made me realize that silence is not empty. It's full of answers we are too distracted to hear. Most people are afraid of silence because it forces them to face themselves without any distractions or escapes. But what if the real reason we avoid silence is because deep down we know it will change us completely? After 48 hours without speaking, one thing became clear. Sometimes the loudest growth happens in complete silence. I woke up and made one rule for the next 24 hours. Every random thought that popped into my head, I had to follow it instantly without overthinking. The first thought was simple: get out of bed right now. So I jumped up without hesitation, even though my body wanted more sleep. Then my brain said, drink water, and I chugged a full glass like it was a life or death mission. No delays, no excuses. A few seconds later, check your phone, and without thinking twice, I grabbed it, already noticing how automatic this habit felt. Then something weird happened. My mind whispered, put the phone away, and I obeyed again, confused who was really in control. While brushing my teeth, a random thought hit, smile at yourself in the mirror. And I did, feeling strangely uncomfortable but curious. Walking outside, my brain said, take a different route. So I turned without planning, stepping into unfamiliar streets with no destination. Then came, look at the sky, and I stopped in the middle of everything, realizing how rarely I actually noticed it before. Moments later, start running, and I just ran. No warm-up, no plan, just pure impulse driving every movement. My mind jumped again, slow down, and I instantly stopped, realizing how chaotic this experiment was becoming. At a cafe, a thought appeared, order something new, so I picked something I'd never tried, trusting randomness over comfort. Then, sit alone and don't use your phone. And suddenly, everything felt louder. Every sound, every movement around me. A strange thought came next. Watch people carefully. And I noticed small details I usually ignore, like expressions and body language. Then my brain said, make eye contact and smile. And the reactions were mixed. Some smiled back, some looked confused. Another thought hit, write down what you feel. And I realized my mind wasn't quiet at all. It was constantly speaking. Hours passed, and the thoughts kept coming faster. Stand up, sit down, walk, stop, like I was following invisible commands. At one point, I thought, this is exhausting. And for the first time, I questioned if following every thought was actually smart. Then another thought responded instantly, keep going, don't quit. And I realized my mind had multiple voices competing. Even simple things became intense, like choosing food, where random thoughts kept changing my decision every second. Later, turn off all noise. And I sat in silence, noticing how loud my internal voice had become without distractions. Then came a deeper thought. Why do you usually ignore these thoughts? And that question stayed with me longer than expected. I started realizing not every thought deserves action. Some are helpful, but many are just noise passing through. But I kept going, because the rule was clear. No matter how random, I had to follow through until the end. As evening came, my mind slowed slightly, but the thoughts became more emotional and reflective instead of chaotic. One thought said, call someone you care about. And that moment felt real, not random, but meaningful. Then another said, be grateful. And for a second, everything felt calm, like my mind wasn't fighting anymore. But suddenly, check your phone again. And I realized how easily I fall back into habits without even noticing. At night, I sat down and my brain said, think about today. And that's when everything finally made sense. Following every thought didn't make me free. It made me realize how little control I actually have. Most thoughts are automatic, repetitive, and not even useful, yet they control so many of my actions daily. But some thoughts, the quiet ones, the intentional ones, those are the ones that actually matter. This experiment didn't change my life instantly, but it showed me something powerful about how my mind really works. I learned that just because a thought appears doesn't mean it deserves to be followed. And maybe the real control isn't following every thought, but choosing which ones truly deserve your attention. I said yes to everything for one full day, no matter how uncomfortable, inconvenient, or strange it felt, and I quickly realized control was an illusion. The first request came early, a stranger asking for help carrying heavy boxes up 3 flights of stairs, and I said yes without hesitation. My arms burned, my breath got heavier, and I questioned why I agreed so fast, but I kept reminding myself that today had no limits. Minutes later, someone asked me for directions even though I had no idea where the place was. And I still said yes confidently. I ended up walking with them for 15 minutes, pretending I knew the way, slowly realizing how easily we fake certainty in life. Then a friend texted asking if I could join an unexpected plan across the city, something I would normally refuse because of time and effort. Without thinking twice, I said yes again, even though my schedule was already falling apart and stress was quietly building inside me. On the way, a street performer asked if I would join his act for a moment, and I felt fear hit instantly, but I still agreed. Standing there in front of strangers, I realized how often fear controls decisions we never even question in our normal routine. As the day went on, every yes started stacking up, turning small choices into a chain reaction I could no longer control. Someone asked for a favor that interrupted my next plan, and I said yes again, watching my entire day collapse piece by piece. I started feeling overwhelmed, not because of one big decision, but because of too many small ones I never filtered. At one point, I agreed to try something completely new and uncomfortable, something I would normally avoid without thinking twice. That moment made me realize how much of life we miss simply because we automatically say no to unfamiliar experiences. But then something changed. The more I said yes, the less I felt in control of my own time, energy, and direction. It felt like I was living everyone else's life instead of my own, reacting instead of choosing with intention and clarity. A simple request turned into lost hours, unexpected stress, and situations I didn't even want to be part of anymore. That's when the experiment stopped feeling exciting and started feeling like I was slowly losing myself in other people's choices. Saying yes gave me opportunities, but it also took away something far more important than I expected at the beginning. It took away my boundaries, the invisible line that protects your time, your focus, and your mental peace every single day. Without boundaries, even good opportunities start to feel heavy, overwhelming, and emotionally draining in ways you don't notice immediately. I realize that saying yes is powerful, but only when it comes from intention, not pressure, fear, or the need to please others. Because every yes automatically becomes a no to something else, something you might actually care about more in the long run. By the end of the day, I felt exhausted. Not physically, but mentally drained from constantly giving away control of my decisions. And that's when it hit me. Balance is not about always saying yes or always saying no. It's about knowing when each one matters. The experiment didn't just show me how people react, it showed me how easily we lose ourselves trying to meet expectations. It taught me that discipline is not just about doing more, it's also about protecting what truly matters from unnecessary distractions. So next time you feel pressure to say yes, remember this: every decision shapes your life more than you think in that moment. Because the real power is not in saying yes to everything, it's in choosing what actually deserves your yes in the first place. I locked my phone away and allowed myself only 1 hour of total usage across an entire 24-hour period to see what would really happen. The first thing I noticed wasn't peace or productivity, it was panic. Like my brain suddenly lost its favorite escape button. Every few minutes my hand reached for a phone that wasn't there, like muscle memory refusing to accept the new reality I forced on it. I didn't realize how often I checked my phone until I physically couldn't, and that realization alone felt uncomfortable and eye-opening. Silence started to feel louder than notifications ever did, and I had no choice but to sit with my own thoughts without distraction. At first, those thoughts weren't calm or deep. They were chaotic, unfinished, and honestly a little overwhelming to face directly. Instead of scrolling to avoid boredom, I had to experience boredom fully, and it felt like something I had been running from for years. Time started moving differently, slower in a strange way, like I was finally noticing moments instead of skipping through them unconsciously. I began observing small details around me that I usually ignore, like sounds, movements, and even my own breathing patterns. Without constant content feeding my brain, I realized how dependent I had become on external stimulation to feel normal or entertained. Conversations felt different too, deeper and more present, because I wasn't half distracted by a screen in my pocket anymore. I noticed how often people around me checked their phones, and for the first time it looked unnatural instead of normal behavior. My focus slowly started improving, not instantly, but enough to notice that my attention wasn't constantly being pulled in different directions. Simple tasks felt less annoying because I wasn't interrupting them every few minutes with random notifications or scrolling habits. There was a moment where I actually felt calm without needing anything, and that feeling surprised me more than anything else. But it wasn't easy. There were times I felt restless and tempted to break the rule just to escape the discomfort building inside. That discomfort showed me something important, that my phone wasn't just a tool, it had quietly become a coping mechanism. Without it, I had to face thoughts I usually avoid, and that made me understand how powerful distraction really is. As hours passed, my mind started settling down, not completely, but enough to feel a sense of control returning slowly. I started thinking more clearly, not faster, but deeper, like my brain finally had space to process things properly. The constant urge to check my phone didn't disappear, but it weakened, proving that habits are strong but not permanent. I also realized how much time I usually lose without even noticing, time that could have been used more intentionally. By limiting my phone, I didn't suddenly become perfect or super productive, but I became more aware, and that changed everything. When I finally used my 1 hour of phone time, it felt different, more controlled, instead of automatic and mindless. I wasn't chasing dopamine anymore. I was choosing what actually mattered to me in that limited time window. That shift alone made me question how I normally use my phone when there are no limits holding me back. This experiment didn't just reduce my screen time, it revealed how much control I had unknowingly given away before. And the most surprising part was realizing that nothing important was missed, but something important was finally gained. After 24 hours, I didn't just use my phone less, I understood it more. And that changed how I see my daily life. I woke up and made one strict rule for the day: no eye contact with anyone, not even for a second. And I knew this would change how people see me instantly. The moment I stepped outside, I kept my eyes down, avoiding every face, and suddenly the world felt colder, like I didn't belong there anymore. At the first store, the cashier tried to greet me, but when I didn't look up, her tone changed completely, from friendly to confused within seconds. I realized something powerful: eye contact isn't just looking, it's silent communication that tells people you are present, aware, and human. Without it, I felt invisible and awkward at the same time, like I existed physically but not socially, and that feeling started getting uncomfortable fast. While walking on the street, people moved differently around me. Some avoided me, some stared longer, trying to figure out what was wrong. One guy even stepped back slightly, as if my lack of eye contact made me seem suspicious or untrustworthy without saying a single word. At a cafe, I ordered coffee without looking up, and the barista repeated my order twice, unsure if I was even listening or just ignoring them. That moment hit me hard. People rely on eye contact to feel respected, and without it, normal interactions start breaking down instantly. As hours passed, my confidence slowly dropped. Even though nothing physical had changed, just one behavior altered how I felt inside. I noticed my body language shrinking, shoulders lower, movements slower, like my brain was reacting to social disconnection in real time. Then something unexpected happened. I started overthinking everything, because without eye contact, I couldn't read reactions or emotions anymore. Every interaction felt uncertain, like walking in the dark without knowing how people perceived me, and that created silent anxiety. In a group setting, it got worse. Conversations moved on without me because I wasn't giving the basic signal that I wanted to be included. That's when I realized eye contact is not just social, it's psychological permission to connect, and I had removed it completely. Later in the day, I passed by someone I knew, and even they hesitated, unsure if I was ignoring them or just acting strange. That small moment showed me how quickly relationships can feel distant when a simple human behavior disappears. By evening, I felt mentally drained, not from talking, but from disconnecting, which is something we rarely think about consciously. I tested one thing before ending the experiment. I finally made direct eye contact with a stranger for a few seconds. Instantly, their face softened. They smiled slightly, and the energy shifted from neutral to human in a single moment. That tiny connection felt powerful, like flipping a switch that brought warmth back into the interaction immediately. It made me realize how much trust, emotion, and understanding is exchanged through something we usually ignore every day. Avoiding eye contact didn't just change how people reacted to me, it slowly changed how I saw myself too. I felt less confident, less connected, and more isolated, even though I was surrounded by people the entire time. This experiment proved something simple but deep. Small behaviors control big social outcomes without us even noticing. Eye contact is not about staring, it's about signaling presence, respect, and awareness in every human interaction. Without it, communication becomes incomplete, and people fill the gaps with assumptions that are often negative. After this day, I understood why confident people naturally maintain eye contact. It builds trust faster than words ever can. So the next time you talk to someone, notice this one thing, because it might completely change how people see you. And what shocked me the most is how something so small can silently control your confidence, your connections, and your entire social reality.